Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Session 4 of your citizenship class over the 2008 civics test. The last video you should have watched was Session 3, which covered the legislative branch and the judicial branch. And so this video is covering the final branch of government, which is the executive branch. And then we'll also talk a little bit about our state government as well. All right, so let's dive right in. So, before we go into the executive branch, we're going to go over a quick overview of what the executive branch actually is. So, the executive branch enforces the laws that are passed by Congress. And if you remember from last time, Congress, we learned, is another name for the legislative branch. So, the executive branch is made up of the president, the vice president, and the cabinet. The cabinet consists of the vice president and the leaders of different federal departments. So over here, we see all the different federal departments that are in the president's cabinet. So we'll talk about the cabinet more in this video. And I'm now going to turn my camera off as now we get into the main portion of this video, and I don't want you guys to be distracted. All right, so first up, we're going to talk about the president. The president is the leader of the country and is in charge of the executive branch. The president is also the commander-in-chief of the military. The president lives and works in the White House at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C. And so here we have the floor plan of the White House. And so you can see down here, this is the Oval Office. This is where the president works and his main office for mostly everything that he or she does. And you can see where the different other rooms are as well. You can see that the vice president's room is over here, which is quite a ways away from the Oval Office. That's done as a countermeasure so that if someone does get into the White House, they aren't able to take out both the president and the vice president, and so that we still have one of them. And then this image down here, this is the presidential seal. So this picture appears on all documents that are from the president's office or from that White House, anything that is an official document that comes from the President of the United States. Okay. So we can now answer questions 1 and 2. Question 1 asks who is in charge of the executive branch, and question 2 asks who is the commander-in-chief of the military. The answer to both of these questions is the exact same. So go ahead and write in the answer to those questions now. So moving on, we have the presidential qualifications and elections. So to be a president, a person must be a natural-born citizen of the United States, and they must be at least 35 years old and must have lived in the United States for 14 years. We vote for the president in November. And so I'm recording this video at the end of November in 2020, so we actually just had a presidential election. The president serves a term of 4 years and is limited to 2 terms. So the president can only serve for 8 years. So this then answers question number 3, which asks for how many years we elect a president. Go ahead and answer that question now. Okay, so there is always the question about what happens if the president dies or becomes so ill that he or she can no longer serve and do the duties that the office of the presidency requires. And so that question was answered with what is called the line of succession. And so if the event ever occurs where the president can no longer serve, the next in line, the vice president, becomes the president. The most famous time in history that this has happened was when President Kennedy, who's this man right over here, was shot and killed. He was assassinated, and his vice president, Lyndon B. Johnson, had to step up to become the president. Now, if on the rare occasion that neither the president nor the vice president can serve, then the person who becomes the president next is the Speaker of the House. The Speaker of the House, remember, is the leader of the House of Representatives. However, this has never happened in our entire history of being a country. The line of succession has never gone past the vice president. But the line of succession stands and it goes through all the federal departments just in case that the people cannot serve. There's always someone who's ready to step up and become that president if they need be. Okay. So we can now answer questions number 4 and 5. Both of these questions ask who becomes president in certain situations. 4 asks who becomes president if the president cannot serve, and question 5 asks who becomes the president if the president and the vice president cannot serve. So go ahead and answer those 2 questions now. Now that we've learned about what happens if the president can no longer serve, let's learn about the current president and the vice president. So currently, the president of the United States is Joe Biden, and the vice president is Kamala Harris. And so this is a picture of these two right here. This is President Biden, and this is Vice President Harris. And so these individuals are both from the Democratic Party. Okay? So we can now answer question number 6, 7, and 8. Question 6 asks, who is the current president? Question 7 asks, who is the vice president? And question 8 asks, what political party they are from. Go ahead and answer those 2 questions now. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about a different part of the executive branch that we touched on earlier in this video, the cabinet. So, the cabinet has one main role. They advise the president. The president is in charge of the country, meaning he or she has to know about and be responsible for a lot of important things. But it's pretty much impossible for one person to be an expert in all of these fields, especially when you're not only dealing with problems in America, but problems abroad, and you're dealing with running an entire branch of the federal government. So it's a lot of responsibilities. And so what the cabinet does is they're there to help with those responsibilities and help make it a bit easier for him. So there are 15 cabinet members along with the vice president for a grand total of 16 total. Cabinet members, remember, are the heads of the different federal departments, and they're called secretaries. And some of these different cabinet members or positions are the Secretary of State, who's the head of the State Department, the Secretary of Defense, who's the head of the Defense Department, the Secretary of Education, who heads the Department of Education, and then the Secretary of Labor, who heads the Department of Labor. These are just 4 examples of the 15 total departments. And so here we see a picture then. You have President Trump. He has signed a bill, and these men and women behind him, these are his members of the cabinet and other advisors who helped advise him on this bill, and they're here to help in the signing. So this is very common. You'll have the president's cabinet behind the president's desk when they sign a bill to show that, we all support this bill and what's happening. So, questions 9 and 10 ask about the cabinet. Question 9 asks about the role of the cabinet, and question 10 asks for you to name 2 cabinet members or positions. There are four listed here: Secretary of State, Defense, Education, and Labor. You just need to know two of them. Pick the two that are the easiest for you to remember. All right, so the last part of the executive branch that we're going to talk about is how laws fit into the executive branch. We already learned that in session 3 that the legislative branch or Congress writes bills and approves them by a vote. And a bill is just another name for a new law. So before a law actually becomes a law, it is known as a bill. And so that's what I just said here. The legislative branch writes the bills and approves them. A bill is a new law. And so if a bill that Congress approves is sent to the president, the president then has two options once he has received the bill. He can either sign the bill and then it becomes a law, or he can veto a bill and it does not become a law. A veto is a fancy way of saying, no, I don't like this law and I don't think it should become law. So while yes, Congress ultimately makes all of the laws of the country, the president is given the power of deciding if those laws actually go into effect. And so then you can see here, this is former President Barack Obama. You can see he's signing something that looks to be like a bill, so he obviously thought this bill was good and it should become a law. And so we can now answer questions number 11 and 12. And so question 11 asks who signs bills to become law, and question 12 asks who vetoes bills. And the answer to both of these is the exact same. So go ahead and take some time and write that answer in now for both questions. All right, so that's all about the executive branch. So we're now going to move on to the state government. And so here, you have the picture of Iowa because we're in Iowa, so we're going to talk specifically about the Iowa government a little bit. This is the Iowa flag. You can see it here, and we have the eagle holding the banner that says, "Our liberties we prize, and our rights we will maintain." Okay? So, we talked about how the United States has a national government and a constitution. Well, states have these same things as well. Each state has its own government and its own state constitution. Like the federal government, each state government has three branches. We have a state legislative branch, a state executive branch, and a state judicial branch. State legislatures make state laws. The laws that Congress makes, those are federal laws. State laws are different laws than federal laws. However, these state laws must still agree with the United States Constitution. So, for instance, the United States Constitution gives everyone the freedom of religion. A state law cannot decide that citizens have to practice a certain religion, as that law would go against the Constitution. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about Iowa's government. While the president is the head of a country, the governor is the head of a state. And so the chief executive of Iowa is the governor, who enforces the state laws and also prepares the state budget. Iowa's governor is Kim Reynolds, and she is a member of the Republican Party. And so this woman right here, this is Kim Reynolds. She is our current governor of Iowa. Excuse me. Kim Reynolds has held this position since 2017, and she is the first woman to ever be the governor of Iowa. So she made history when she became governor. And so the governor of Iowa works in the state capital city of Des Moines. So Kim Reynolds works every day in Des Moines. So she works in the capital of Iowa, and the president works in the capital of the United States. So we can see the similarities there. Okay? And so we can now answer questions number 13 and 14. Question 13 asks, who is the governor of Iowa? And question 14 asks, what is the capital of Iowa? So go ahead and answer those questions now. We're now going to do some worksheet review to make sure that you guys have the correct answers and you can be studying that in preparation for your interview. So question number 1 asks, who is in charge of the executive branch? And that is the president. Number 2 says, who is the commander-in-chief of the military? That is also the president. Question number 3 says, we elect a president for how many years? And that is for 4 years. Question 4, if the president can no longer serve, who becomes president? That is the vice president. Question number 5, if both the president and the vice president can no longer serve, who becomes the president? And that is the Speaker of the House. Question number 6, who is currently the President of the United States? That is Joe Biden. Question 7, who is the current Vice President of the United States? That is Kamala Harris. Question number 8, what is the political party of the current president? And that is the Democratic Party. Question 9, what does the president's cabinet do? They advise the president. Question number 10, what are 2 cabinet level positions? Remember that I named many of them, but here are a couple. You have the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of Education, and then Secretary of Labor. Any of these 4 are correct, or any of the 4 that we mentioned in the slides. You just need to have 2 of them. Number 11, who signs bills to become law? That is the president. Question number 12, who vetoes bills? That is also the president. Question number 13, who is the governor of the state of Iowa? And that is Kim Reynolds. And finally, question number 14, what is the capital of Iowa? And that is Des Moines. So these are the correct answers for the worksheet for this session. So make sure that your answers match mine and what you have are correct. And you want to make sure that you have those correct answers because these are the questions that come directly from the citizenship test and you may be asked them during your interview. So you want to make sure that you're studying the right things. Okay, well, after worksheet review, you know what comes next, and that is the dictation practice. I'll read a sentence, and I want you to write what I say. So we're going to start with the first sentence. The first sentence is, the president lives in the White House. The president lives in the White House. All right, so here's that sentence that I just said. You should have written this. The president with a capital P lives in the White House, and white and house are both capitalized, okay? So the second sentence then, once I say it, remember to go ahead and write it down on that sheet, all right? Sentence 2, there are 15 cabinet members that advise the president. There are 15 cabinet members that advise the president. All right, so here's that sentence. You can see that 15 is written as the number. You can spell out the word 15, but I personally think that it's easier to remember if you just write the number. So there are 15 cabinet members that advise the president. All right, and finally, sentence number 3. The governor of Iowa works in Des Moines. The governor of Iowa works in Des Moines. All right, so here's that sentence. So you have the governor. You can see governor is capitalized. Of Iowa, Iowa is also capitalized. Works in Des Moines. And so Des Moines is spelled weird because it's not spelled the way it's pronounced. You have DES and then MOINES for Des Moines. Okay? Des Moines. So remember that dictation is a crucial part of the citizenship interview, and you will need to be able to write a sentence that you hear the interviewer say. And if you can do that, if you can successfully do what we just did, then you will pass the writing portion of the interview. Okay, so between now and the next video, I'm going to turn my camera back on. Between now and the next video, I want you guys to complete the homework that I have provided you. So in this session's writing practice, there are 8 sentences that I want you guys to practice writing out and then speaking out loud. And now I know in the past I've only assigned 5 sentences, but I believe in you guys. I want to push you a little bit, and I want to push you to step out of your comfort zone because I know you can do it. Okay? And if I believe in you, then you should believe in yourself as well. Okay? There are also 2 reading exercises for you guys. There's the executive branch and Iowa. So these are longer again, so I want you to practice reading them out loud, taking them slowly, and breaking them into parts if you need to. It looks like a lot, but I believe in you. I wouldn't assign an increase in homework if I didn't believe that you could do it, okay? So just breathe. It's okay. Believe in yourself. Okay, well, that's the end of this session, session 4. And so the next, I'll turn this off really quick. You can see that our next class, we're going to talk about expansion and the Civil War. And that's session 5, okay? And this picture will make more sense when we talk about that. I'll turn this back on. Hi again. So that's session 5, but the next actual video is the review for sessions 3 and 4. And so in that review video, we're going to talk about the legislative, judicial, and the executive branch. And so I want you guys to make sure you watch that video before you move on to the session 5, okay? And as always, if you have any questions, please call the Columbus Junction Public Library at 319-728-7972. Or if you would prefer to email, you can email Mandy Grimm at this email address right here. She is the library director. Or if you would prefer to come in and talk to us in person, you are free to come in whenever the library is open, and we are more than willing to answer any and all questions you may have. All right, so that's all I have. Happy homeworking, and I'll see you all soon in the review video for sessions 3 and 4. Bye.